Good morning. In this video, we will be discussing chapter 3, a top level view of computer function and interconnection. Actually, at top level, a computer consists of CPU, central processing unit, memory and I/O components, and with some other modules like one or two more modules. Okay, these components are interconnected in some way to achieve the basic function of a computer system, like to take input and do some processing and produce the output. Okay, so at this top level, we can categorize a computer system by describing the external behavior of each component, data and control signals, exchange the data with other components, something like that, and the interconnection structure and the controls that is needed to manage the use of the interconnection structure. Okay, so this top level view of structure and function is too important because of its explanatory power in understanding the nature of computer. So this is the main thing we are going to discuss in the chapter structure and function of a computer system. So let's move on to the computer components. As you know, the computer components we already discussed in the previous chapter. All complementary computer designs are based on the concepts which is developed by John von Neumann. That is the one we studied in the previous one. So as per John von Neumann, the three key concepts are: data and instructions are stored in a single read-write memory, which is the random access memory. Your program and the data to execute your program are saved in a read-write memory, and the contents of this memory are addressable by the locations. So each locations in the memory has an address, regardless of whether the content is having a data or instruction, what type of data is inside the location, no matter, but each location has an address. So accessing the location is by the address. And the third point is execution occurs in a sequential fashion, like after executing the first instruction, then execute the next instruction, second, third, fourth. So it goes on in sequence from one instruction to another instruction. Hardwired program, this is the result of the process of connecting the various components in a desired configuration. So that is the idea of hardwired program. Basically these days we don't have the hardwired program. It's all like software where the hardware take action or performs the operation based on the instructions given in the software. That we will see in the next slide. So here you will see the programming hardware and the programming in software. When you see the hardwired program, the first diagram, so in a way that the computer is designed to produce a result for some specific action. So you give a data to that computer based on the because the computer is designed in a way it take input and produce output for a particular operation. So that is programming the hardware. So you program the hardware in a way it take input and do some specific action and produce the output. Like for example, only multiplication or only addition, something like that. That is the programming in hardware. So let's look into the next diagram, programming in software. So we have some set of statements, a program. So the program is interpreted. Can you see the first, this one, instruction interpreter. So mean to say that your program, the statements in your program are interpreted, like it's broken into pieces and try to understand what is this instruction, where are the source, where is the destination. And based on that, the general purpose arithmetic and logic function will perform the operation based on the control signal. If it is an add instruction, control signal will tell the ALU do the addition. If it is a multiply, based on the control signal, ALU will perform the required operation. So you take the input, the data is given to the ALU. Based on the control signal, it performs the operation and produces the result. This is programming in software. Fine. So this is the idea of programming in hardware, programming in software. So let's move on to the hardware, software, and then the major components. So when you look into the software, it's a sequence of instructions. So part of the hardware interprets each instruction and generates control signals, and based on the control signal, ALU take the input, perform the operation and produces the output. This was the one. The first part is the one we saw in the previous diagram. Okay, so here in the previous diagram, the second diagram, this is the one, I'm talking about the second diagram. We have programming in software. Okay, so this is about the software. Software means a collection of instructions, and in your computer system you have some section of your hardware that interprets your program, each instruction, and generates a control signals, and your program operates in a way the ALU performs based on the control signal. Okay, the major components of the computer system. So here got the major components. So CPU is the main component of your computer system. It has the general purpose arithmetic and logic unit, and it has the interpreter. So it has an interpreter and it has the arithmetic and logical unit. Okay, so the interpreter is the one interprets the instruction, generates the control signal. Arithmetic and logical unit performs the action based on the control signal. Fine. And IO components. IO means input and output component. So the input module and output module. So input module contains some component for accepting data from the to accept the data or instruction or whatever, converting them into an internal form like zeros and ones. Okay, output module, it's to report the results to the user. So these are the two input and output modules, and about the CPU. So this is about the some types of registers. So there are some 4 registers that are very much needed for the execution of your program. They are mean to say memory address register, MAR, memory buffer register, input output address register, input output buffer register. Okay, based on the John von Neumann program, and the instructions and data are kept in the read-write memory, and the read-write memory, the locations in the memory are addressable. So this is the idea of the John von Neumann, is it? So the CPU, here it exchanges the data with the memory. So the CPU, it takes the data from memory, or it puts something onto the memory, it stores or it loads. So it is loading or it is storing. CPU is dealing with memory. So for this purpose, it uses 2 internal registers. So CPU uses 2 internal registers. They are memory address register, memory buffer register. So here the memory address register, in short MAR, specifies the address in memory for the next read or for the next write. Okay, where we are going to read or write something like that, for the next read and for the next write, where I am going to read the data from, or where I am going to write the data or next read write operation. And let's see the memory buffer register MBR, which contains the data. So this buffer register contains the data which is to be returned onto the memory. Okay, so that's the idea. Or else this register, buffer register, will be saved with the read data. If it is a memory read operation, I read from memory. After you read from memory, where to put? It is in memory buffer register. Or else, if I am going to write something onto the memory, writing. So, I need two things. What I want to write, where I am going to write. What I want to write is in the buffer register, where I am going to write. The address of the memory location is in MAR. Okay. So this is the two things. Similarly, IO address register specifies the IO device. So every device has a unique ID. So the IO, input output address register, specifies the particular IO device. And input output buffer register, it's going to have the data, what I read from the IO input device or what I am going to display onto the output device. If I am going to print something onto the printer or onto the screen, what I am going to print, that data is going to be saved in the buffer register. Sometimes I am reading from the keyboard. What I read from the keyboard, the input will be saved into the buffer register. Okay. So this is about the registers that's used by the CPU, where the CPU uses these register when it exchanges the data with memory or with IO. So let's see, this is the idea of the registers, the computer components, the top level view. Here let's see the abbreviations first. Can you see here PC? It's program counter. PC means program counter. And the next IR means instruction register. MAR, MBR, IO, input output address register, input output buffer register. So we all see these four. But what is this on the top? PC and IR. PC means it is a register which contains the address. Okay, and IR contains the instruction. Currently, the CPU is executing some instruction, is it? So what is the instruction it is currently executing? That is in the IR. So the address of the instruction will be in PC. Okay, so after finishing the execution of current instruction, CPU has to execute the next instruction, because what John von Neumann said, the program is in the memory and every location has an address and it is going in sequence. Execution goes in sequence. So after finishing the first instruction, the CPU has to execute the second instruction. So the address of that next instruction will be in PC. Okay. So every time when CPU loads an instruction onto IR, after it loads an instruction onto IR, PC will be incremented. Remember this, we will come back to this point after a while. Okay, so remember, there is a system bus. That system bus, that is the one used for exchanging the data between what? Between the CPU, between the main memory, between the IO module. IO module here I am referring the buffer, because the devices are connected to the buffer. Input device and output device are connected to the buffer. Your keyboard is connected to this IO module. Your printer is connected. Okay. So here, can you see the system bus? It is a two directional. Two directional means data goes in this two direction. Okay. So from here it goes to the memory or CPU, or from CPU to the memory or from memory to the CPU. So can you see here the system bus? It's a bidirectional system bus. So it takes the data from input sent to the CPU or from CPU to memory somewhere. Okay, we'll come back to the movement of data after a while. Let's move on to the instruction cycle. This is what you call basic instruction cycle. So let's assume that you are executing a program. There should be some stages in the execution of your program. So what are the stages? Fetch cycle, execute cycle. What do you mean? Fetch cycle, it fetches the instruction. Execute cycle, execute the instruction. From where it fetch the instruction? From the memory. Because what John von Neumann said, the program and data are in memory, read-write memory. And every location in the memory has an address. They are addressable location in the memory. And the sequence, execution sequence goes one after another. It's not like execute the first instruction and execute the fifth instruction. No. Execution goes in one after another. This is what John von Neumann said. I said in the previous slide, 2-3 slides back. So same thing. So fetch the instruction, execute the instruction. So one instruction is over. Now go back, fetch the next instruction, execute the second. Go back again and then fetch the third instruction, execute the third instruction. Can you see this fetch cycle and execute cycle? They are executed. They are like gone in a loop. One after another. They are gone in the loop. Is it fine? Is it until the last instruction is executed, they will be gone in a loop. So this is the basic instruction cycle. But let's go on in depth. What is a fetch cycle? So when you look into the fetch cycle, at the beginning of each instruction cycle, the processor, what it does, it fetches an instruction from memory. Okay, how it fetches an instruction memory? Because the program counter, just in the few slides back, I said PC, it is a program counter, it is a register that holds the address of the instruction to be fetched next. So based on the PC, it fetches the instruction from memory, then the PC will be changed. I fetched already, I fetched one instruction. So PC will be incremented so that next time the CPU will fetch the next instruction. So remember, PC holds the address of the instruction to be fetched next. Okay, so processor increments the PC. This is what I was telling. After each instruction is fetched from memory, processor increments the PC so that it will be fetching the next instruction. Okay, remember this point. So the fetched instruction, okay, the PC take an instruction. So the fetched instruction is loaded into the instruction register. Okay, fine. So remember, you have a memory. It contains many locations. Okay, let's assume it contains many locations, and you have two registers. So this is, assume that this is called PC, and one register called IR, instruction register. Okay, so every location in this is your memory. It has an address. Let's say this is address 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Okay, for example, the PC contains the address 1. So in this address 1, there is an instruction. CPU fetch the instruction, put it onto the IR. So after it fetch, the processor increments the PC. Now the PC will be 1 plus 1, which is equivalent to 2. Okay, the address will be now 2. So, for example, the fetched instruction is loaded onto the instruction register. It is here. Okay, and the processor interprets the instruction and perform the action. So, the instruction is here. So, the processor takes the instruction, interpret the instruction. Interpret means it try to break down the instruction, try to understand what is it. If it is an add, it performs the addition. If it is a load, it performs the load. What is the instruction? Based on the instruction, it performs the action. Okay then. So this is about the fetch cycle. This is what I was talking about. Okay then. Now let's move on to the action categories. What do you mean by action categories? Is like what type of operations are performed by the processor. So what are the actions? So there are 4 types of actions we have here. Basically, they are processor memory, processor IO, data processing and control. Okay, so processor memory. What is the processor memory? From the name you can say processor memory. So data may be transferred from processor to memory, or maybe memory to the processor. So there is some transfer of data between the 2 components, processor and memory. And another type of action. These are the categories of action. Category means like actions falls into this category. So next, second one, processor IO. Here it is, processor IO. The same thing. Data may be transferred from processor to IO or from IO to the processor. IO means input output devices. Okay. So let's move on to previous slide. Processor memory, processor IO. Let's remember this point. We already discussed this one. Processor, can you see here? Processor IO. Can you see? Data is transferred from the processor to the IO. Processor IO. Can you understand, everybody? Here what is the idea is, processor memory means data may be transferred from processor to memory. So maybe from processor to memory from this direction, or memory to the processor. So this is the idea we have here. The system bus. The system bus carries the data. This is what I said, that the system bus are 2 direction. So maybe it comes from here to here, or from here to here. Okay, so this is the idea of processor to memory. And another one, second action, I say processor to IO. Fine. You have the system bus. So the data may be transferred from processor to IO, from here to here, or from IO to the processor. Can you get the idea? So the system bus is 2 directional. 2 directional means it goes in both directions. Okay, from IO to the CPU, or from CPU to the processor. So this is what I mentioned in few slides back. So let's go back to the 4 categories of action. Here it is. So this is the 4 categories of action. So the first category I explained using the diagram. Control. Control means an instruction may specify the sequence of execution be altered. Maybe an instruction may specify the sequence of execution be altered, like processor may fetch an instruction from a location somewhere, which specifies the next instruction from another location, etc., etc. Okay then. So the control may specify the sequence of the execution to be altered. Like it doesn't go in sequence, so it wants to change the execution sequence. Okay, fine. The control will tell you that. Especially you may notice this type of sequence alteration if you have looping or if you have branching. You know, branching means if, then condition, then do something, else do something. In if else, you don't have the execution in sequence. Even in looping, it won't be in sequence. You need to go back and execute something. Can you get that? There is a change in the sequence. So who will specify the change in the execution of sequence? The control unit, control action. Okay, and data processing. This is a type of action. So the processor may perform some arithmetic or logical operation. So that type of action is called data processing. Okay, so this is the processing. The data is not only moving from one place to another, data is being processed by a unit called ALU. Okay, so this is the idea. Okay, now we will continue with the characteristics of a hypothetical machine, like for example instruction format. We don't go in depth for the instruction format, but anyway, even in the assembly language practical, we always noticed that the opcode will take the initial bits. Okay, then here it is, the most significant bits are taken by the opcode. Opcode means addition, add, sub, mul, LW, SW, that's the opcode. So the initial most significant bits takes the opcode, and the least and the rest of the bits are for the address. Okay, address of the source, address of the destination, etc, etc. So this is about the instruction format. When you look into the data, let's say integer data, when you have a bits for the integer data like 10101001, the first bit, which is the most significant first bit, is designed for the sign bit. This is, we already discussed in our previous chapter. Okay, like first bit is for the sign. Okay, this is for the sign, the integer representation. 0 means positive, 1 means negative. So one bit is dedicated for the sign bit, and the rest of the bits, here it is 16 bits. So one bit gone for the sign, so the remaining 15 bits are for the value. Magnitude means the value. Okay, and this is the registers we already saw in the previous slides. PC contains the address of the instruction. IR contains this is a register, contains the instruction which is being currently under execution. And there is one new register here, you see, AC, accumulator. This accumulator, it's for the temporary storage. Let's say you are for example, accumulator AC, this is a temporary storage. For example, you are doing some calculation, addition, subtraction. You would like to keep the data in some temporary buffer, then AC will be used, accumulator will be used. So let's assume here one simple example. Let's go here. For example, let's remember this opcode. For example, the opcode here, 1 means load AC from memory. Just remember for one example. 0001, which is 1. 1 means load AC from memory. You are taking some data from memory and you put onto AC. So this is the meaning. You take a data from memory, save it onto AC. And 2 means 0010 means 2, is it? This is the decimal value. 2 means store AC to memory. That is, what you have it in AC, put it onto memory. That way. And 0101 means 5. Okay, let's say this is 5. 5 means add to AC from memory. What does it mean is, you have a data. Okay, this is your AC accumulator. And you have data in memory. So there are many locations, data in memory. Let's assume accumulator contains the value 25 and your memory contains in this location. Let's assume this location contain a value for example 45. Let's assume this way. So what is the operation 5? 0101, what does it mean? Add to AC from memory. So take the value from memory, add it to AC. So 45, 25. So what will be the new value? 70. So 70 will be the new value. Can you get the idea? That is the operation here. So let's consider these three operations. We will be using it in the next slide. 1 means load AC. 2 means store AC, 5 means add to AC from memory. So let's see how does it work in the next example. Okay, just a second. I think you can able to see it now clearly. Yes, fine. Let's see here. This is an example of program execution. Okay, so you see the example here. Let's go step by step. So here this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. So there are 5 steps given in this diagram. So let's go step 1. I already mentioned PC contains the, here this is PC. PC contains the address. So it is 300. So the address 300, here it is, I underline. Address 300 contains the this is a memory location, by the way. It contains some instruction. So what it contains? Let me write here. It contains 1940. Okay. So the 1 is the opcode and 490 is the address. So I write it here. 1 is the opcode, 940 is the address or in the memory location. So let me write clearly for the first example. Later on you will understand. Okay. Just in the previous slide I mentioned 1 means what? Load AC from memory. Just remember the previous slide. I say 1 means load AC, 2 means store AC, 5 means add to AC. Okay. So 1 means load AC. So you need to load something to AC from memory. Okay. So which location in memory? This is the address. You have the address 940. So go to 940. This is 940. So go to 940. What do you have in 940? That address. This is the content 0003. So load it onto AC. So can you see here? AC now contains 0003. Do you get the idea? So the instruction is loaded onto the IR and PC contains the address. Can you see in step 2? In step 2, the PC is incremented automatically. It was 300, now it is 301, and IR contains the instruction what is currently in execution. Currently I am executing this instruction which is in address 300. The instruction is 1940. This is the instruction I am currently executing. Where I am keeping the instruction? In IR. While I am executing that instruction, remember PC is automatically incremented by the CPU. So what is the after execution? What I do? 1 means load AC. Am I right? So I load the AC. Now AC contains the data. Fine. So step 1, step 2 over. Now let me do now I am in step 2. Now let's look into the PC. What PC now contains? Now PC contains, let me write it, PC value is 301. So what is the value of PC? 301. Normally PC contains the address of the instruction. So address of the instruction 301. So in the address, what instruction you have? 5941. I told you opcode is the first one. What do you see is the opcode. What do you see next is the address. Okay. So 5 is the opcode. 5 means what? 5 means add to AC. Am I right? So what is the verb? Add to AC from memory. That is the meaning of 5. So memory, from memory. Add to AC from memory. You can check the meaning of the opcode in the previous slide. Okay then. So memory means 941. Go to 941. Okay, and take the value. So what you are going to do, you go to address 941, take the value. 941 will have the value, so you need to take the value. Okay, let me write in detail. Value, spelling, value. Okay, and add it to AC. Add it to AC. These are the things I'm going to do. First, I will go to the location 941. So here it is. So I'm here in the step 3, is it? So here you see the step 3. Go to 941. 941 contains what? 0002. Okay. So your 941 contains 0002. So what is the address contain? 0002. Take the value. What is the value? 0002. Add it to AC. Actually AC contains what? AC contains, here it is. AC contains 0003. So let's add it. 0003. This is the AC. What the 941 contains? 0002. So when you add, you get 0005. Okay then. So where to put this value? You put it in AC. So can you see 0005? Here it is. It is in AC. Step 4. When you see step 4, final answer, it is B, means the execution is over. When you see step 4, the execution is over. I add the AC. I add the to AC. Add to AC. Now AC contains the final answer. You got the idea now? So this is the idea of step 2 and 3 and 4. So now I am in 4. When you look into the 4, let's see the program counter. What do you see in program counter? It's been automatically incremented. When I start step 3, it was 301. Now can you see what is it? 302. What does it mean? The next cycle, I take the instruction from 302. So the instruction is in 302. What is the instruction? It is 2941. I told you. The first one is the opcode. The next are the address. What is the opcode 2? 2 means store AC to memory. In the previous step, what AC contain? You just now added the value 0005. That is the value of AC. Now I am going to store it in memory. That is the meaning of 2. Store it in memory. Which location in memory? 941. Okay. So 941, in this address I want the new value of AC. See, 941, I save the AC. AC contains 0005. So save it in the 941 address. Okay, store AC to memory. That is the meaning of 2. Now can you get the idea? 1 means what, 2 means what, 5 means what in this example. You all can see it in the, you all can see in the previous slide. Let me erase first. So you can able to understand the sequence. I'm not going to remember in the exams. I'm not going to ask the diagram. Here we are seeing for understanding what PC contains, what AC contains, what IR. Okay, what is the instruction? Instruction contains, here it is, the previous slide. Let's go back to the instruction. So your instruction contains, just a second, opcode and the address. Your data contains the sign and the magnitude. What is the PC, what is IR, what is AC, what is the meaning of load, store, add. So this is the example. So let's look into this. What is the instruction format and this is the example how it works. So there are 3 instructions given and how the 3 instructions are executed. Okay, so I guess you understand from this. Now let's move on to the diagram of the complete diagram of the instruction cycle. The previous one we saw instruction cycle. It's a very basic diagram. That's what it's called, basic instruction cycle. It contains only fetch cycle, execute cycle. But it's not only fetch cycle and execute cycle. We had many things. Just now we saw one example. You had the address, and using the address you take the data and you add it and you store it, you load it. You did many things, is it, in the previous example. So based on that we modify the instruction cycle. So this is the complete instruction cycle state diagram. So it starts from here. Actually you have to start from here. Like you need to, just a second, you need to calculate the instruction address. Normally where you have the instruction address, it is in the PC. PC contains the address of the instruction. Do you remember? In the previous example I told you. So PC contains the address. So you just take the address from PC and fetch the instruction. Where do you fetch and keep it? You keep it in IR, instruction register. Is it? Then you decode the instruction. What do you mean by decode? You try to understand. You know, last example I show you the instruction. It was 2 and then for example maybe I just say 2941, and you understand that 2 means the opcode and 941 means the address. So this is what you call decoding the instruction. So instruction operation decode. You decode, you split the instruction and try to understand the operation. So 2 means the operation is, for example, storing. Is it? Store AC to memory. That is the meaning of 2. So you decode the instruction and try to understand what is this operation. Okay. And based on the operation, you need address of the operand. Okay, so operand address. You find out the operand's address. And then you fetch the operand and perform the operation. Okay. And after you perform the operation, you may have to store the result back. Okay. So where to store the result? Operand address calculation and store the operand. Okay, store the operand means store the result. This is about the result and this is about the source. Here I am talking about the results. Here in the previous exercise we use AC, only one register. So you keep the source in the same register, you put the result onto the same register. That is very simple example, but it's not the case. You may have source register separately and destination register separately. When I go back to your MIPS, let's go back to your MIPS. You may have an instruction called add. So this is the opcode, and you may have, for example, T0, and maybe you have T1, and then you may have T2. So here this is your add. So you try to understand the operation. The operation is adding. And now find out the operand's address. So where is the operand 1? Okay, and fetch the operand. Take the operand from the register. And you still have second operand. So this is a loop. Can you see it goes and comes. Goes and comes. So you still have second operand, which is T2. Take the value. Operand fetch means take the value. And after you finish with the source, you go and do the operation, which is addition. After you finish addition, I have to put the result in T0. Okay, calculate the address of T0 and put the answer in T0. Store the answer in T0. Sometimes you may have multiple result. So come back and find out the address of the second result and store the second result. So here in this example only one result. Who knows, you may have more than one result. So these are the things you may have to do in execution of one single instruction. So after finishing one single instruction, you go back here and then do for the second instruction. Calculate the address of the next instruction and continue the next instruction and third instruction, fourth instruction, fifth instruction. So this instruction cycle is executed until your program completes the execution, completes all the instructions. Okay then. So this is about the instruction execution cycle or instruction cycle state diagram. Okay, but remember, there are something you need to remember. What is this? Is interrupt. So there is something you need to know. So there is a mechanism for interrupt. So what is that interrupt is? Virtually all computers provide a mechanism by which the other modules, what do you mean by other modules? Maybe input-output devices or memory devices may interrupt the normal processing of the processor. Okay, what does it mean? We will see one example. So this is an example for interrupt. Okay, let's assume here one, okay, by the way, one thing is, the slide shows only the picture. The explanation of the picture is down in the notes section. Please read the explanation given in the notes section, okay, or from the textbook. Under the diagram in the textbook, you will have the explanation for the interrupts, or for the picture. What picture is given here? Okay, fine. Okay, let's see the idea here. Here you see the interrupts. Okay, so the interrupts are provided primarily as a way to improve the processing efficiency. What does it mean, processing efficiency? Let's look into the first diagram, which is no interrupts. Here it is written, no interrupts. So for example, assume that there is no interrupt. This is your user program. It contains a sequence of statements. Can you see here, user program number 1, write. There is something written here, okay. So here, write means this is an input-output process. And here, one more input-output process. What do you mean by input-output process? Either you take the data from the input device or you write to the output device. So here, this is write, means output. So there is a process for the output, okay. So when you are writing onto an output device, so can you see here, the CPU executes normally. When it sees the write operation, it goes and executes module 4. So what is the module 4? Module 4 is preparing the output device. Okay. What do you mean by module 4 prepares the output device? Like it contains a sequence of instructions. Here, this I'm talking about this module. It contains a sequence of instruction to prepare for the write operation. So it is to prepare for the write operation. Maybe like it include copy the data onto the buffer. So there should be a buffer. So it copies the data onto the buffer. Preparing the parameters for the device command, something like that. So that is the this part. This part number 4. It is for preparing. Prepare for the actual input-output operations. Okay, and now down here you have something, it is written for 5. So what is this 5? 5 is the actual sequence of instruction, actual IO command, actual writing. So here is the one, I write it onto the output device. So first you need to prepare the output device, then you write to the output device. If it is a read operation, the same thing. So if it is a read also, let's assume that you have a read, you don't have a write, you have a read, same thing. You need to prepare the input device, okay, and then you read the data from the input device. Okay, when you say prepare the input device, maybe the input device is busy with something else, so you just make the CPU to wait for it, and then you read the data from the input device. So that's the idea. But let's look into this diagram more closely. When you have a write command or write instruction in your program, CPU goes and prepare the input output module, and then it perform the input output operation, and then it comes back here and it continue execution. So remember, CPU speed and the input output module speed are not the same. Always remember one thing, CPU is faster, input output devices are slower than CPU. So what is the idea here? So the CPU here, it wastes plenty of time while waiting for the input and output module to finish this write operation. Nothing is done by the processor here. This task is done by the input output module. So what the processor is doing now? It's idle, waiting for the input output device to finish the task. Do you get the idea? So input output device is doing this task, write operation, and the CPU is idle. Okay, same goes for this write operation. Here another write operation. In your program, you may have many read and write operation. So when CPU come to this write operation, it moves to idle, and the IO device, it prepares the sequence of, this is a sequence of instruction to prepare the input output device, and this is the actual input output operation is done here. So during this time, again CPU sits idle. So plenty of time is wasted, plenty of CPU time is wasted here. Okay, so this is no interrupt. Let's look into, we have an interrupt. Okay, let's see how does it work. Okay then, so here we have a interrupt with the interrupt. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, now I'm in the diagram B. So we have an interrupt. So when we have an interrupt with interrupt, what is the idea here is, so the processor executes the instructions, and when it sees the write operation, of course, when it sees write operation, of course, the IO program number 4 will be taken into account. What do you mean by 4? Preparing the input or output devices. So CPU is not necessary. Here CPU is no need for the CPU to wait. Am I right? So what's the idea here is, so here CPU is not necessary here. So it is to prepare the input output device or module here. Okay. So during this time, when the input output devices are getting ready, CPU can be busy with its task. So it can continue execution. Okay then. So the processor can be engaged in executing other instructions. So it is engaged with executing the other instruction while IO operation in progress, while this is in progress. Okay. For example, let's assume that in this point, okay, maybe here the input device is ready, and now maybe read the data from input device or write to the data from the output device. So what will happen here? The input device, the input output program, it is invoked. Okay, what it does? It sends an interrupt signal to the processor. It sends an interrupt, a signal to the processor. So here processor sees the interrupt signal. After it seeing the interrupt signal, what processor does? It was executing some instruction, is it? Let's see, it was executing 2A. So it will save the context of the 2A in memory, and it goes to the interrupt handler, and it continues to perform the IO. You take the data and put the data, whatever is it, and then after finishing this interrupt handler, it goes back, resume the interrupted task. It was in the middle of something, is it? It goes and resumes. Can you get the idea? The same goes with the next write operation. If it has a write operation, another write operation, of course, when it has another write operation, it goes and prepares. So there is an IO, the task is to prepare an IO device, input output device. During this time, processor continues, engages with other tasks. It is engaged in executing other instructions. When the IO device is ready, then it sends a signal, interrupt signal to the processor. For example, while it receives the interrupt signal, it was executing 3A. So it saves the context in the buffer or in memory. Then it goes and executes the interrupt handler. After finishing the interrupt handler, comes back, continue with the pending one because it was in the middle. So it resumes back the execution. So this is the idea of interrupt. So here in this area, there is no wastage of your processing time. Processor is not simply idle. Processor is not sitting idle. While waiting for the IO, while preparing IO, here it is. While preparing IO, processor was busy with some task. Here also it was busy with some task. It was not idle anymore. Okay then. So this is the idea of interrupt with interrupt. This is with interrupt. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the example with interrupt. Here you may see it. When the user program is being executed and when there is a interrupt, when IO device interrupts the processor goes and executes the interrupt handler. While it goes, before it goes, it saves the context of the instruction being executed in the buffer and then it goes and executes the interrupt handler. After finishing the handler, it comes back and resumes its pending process. It resumes the pending operation. So this is the transfer of control via the interrupts. Okay, so now the instruction cycle with interrupts. Just now we saw the instruction cycle. It doesn't have any interrupt. Now the instruction cycle is with interrupt. This is the basic instruction cycle. Do you remember previously we saw basic instruction cycle? So this is the one. So here is the fetching the instruction, executing the instruction. After finishing the execution, do not go and fetch the next instruction. Here it is. Check. Do you have any interrupt? Check for interrupt. If there got an interrupt, you need to execute the interrupt service routine. If no interrupt, then you go and fetch the next instruction, execute the next instruction. Okay. So this is the idea. So this is the timing diagram. So if you have interrupt, if the processor with interrupt, without interrupt, if it works, which will be better? So let's see the without interrupt. So there is no interrupts, there is no interrupt service routine. So processor executes something, and while waiting for the preparation, the black shade is the one processor waits for the IO operation. So what does it mean? It is idly, it is simply sitting idle, wasting the processor time, and after finishes the IO operation, it resumes back, and again here it is simply waiting for the IO to finish, and then it executes. So the processor time is longer. And let's look into with interrupts. So here it executes task 1, task 4. While waiting for the IO operation, it was doing something and then resumes for the task 5 and then continues with the 2B, etc., etc. So can you see the execution time? It is shorter with interrupt. Okay, so this is the main advantage. So your CPU time is saved. CPU is not going to simply sit idle. It will be busy all the time. CPU will be busy the whole time. Okay. So let's see the execution cycle now with interrupt. Okay, remember this point. This is the instruction cycle with the interrupt. So remember one thing, I'll come back here. So first the processor, when in the interrupt cycle, the processor checks to see if any interrupts. Here it is. Checks to see any interrupts. Here it is. Okay. If any interrupts have occurred, indicated by the interrupt signal, there will be an interrupt signal. If no interrupt are pending, processor proceed to the fetch cycle. Here it is. It will proceed to the fetch cycle and then fetches the next instruction and it executes the next instruction. If an interrupt is pending, processor, if there is an interrupt, then the processor suspends the execution. It suspends the execution of the current program being executed. Save the context. This means saving the address of the next instruction to be executed after the interrupt service routine is over, from where it has to come back. Okay, so it saves that one and it sets the program counter to the starting address of the interrupt service routine and it goes and executes the interrupt service routine. Okay, remember when the program is being executed, when the instruction is being executed, it disables the interrupt. So while it executes and while it is doing execution, it is enabled. After finishing the execution, it enables. Okay, while it is in execution, interrupts are disabled. After finishing the execution, it is enabled. Now it checks, is there any interrupts waiting? Then that will be considered. So remember that point. So this is the interrupt execution cycle. Sorry, this is the instruction execution cycle with interrupt. This is the state diagram with interrupt. Detailed diagram. Everything else is the same. You know, these are all the same. Here, when you finish with the operand result, operand, store the operand. Here it is. Here you may see my cursor. After finishing the operand, storing the operand result, check for the interrupt. If no interrupt, of course you go back and do something. If there got an interrupt, then you need to you are going to take the address of the interrupt service routine. Here it is, interrupt service routine. Okay, if you are checking the interrupt, if there got an interrupt, it will be executing the interrupt service routine. Okay, if there is no interrupt, it will be executing the normal program, next program sequence, normal sequence. It will be executing the normal sequence of your program. So this is the idea, but let's see a few more topics. Here it is. Transfer of control when we have multiple interrupts. So this is the main thing you need to remember. We may have multiple interrupts. What do you mean by multiple interrupt is, Sometimes you may have an interrupt while processing, you may have another interrupt. Okay, while interrupt are in the process, you may have another interrupt, is it? So that is the case. So there are two approaches that can be taken dealing with the multiple interrupt. Okay, you may have 2-3 interrupts coming. Okay, so how CPU handles the interrupt service routine? Which comes first? Which comes later? So that's the idea. So there are two approaches to handle the multiple interrupt. The first is to disable the interrupts while the interrupt is being processed. In this example, when, for example, at this point the processor is going to serve the interrupt service routine, while it is executing this interrupt service routine, it will disable the interrupt. Okay, so another interrupt cannot interrupt the CPU because it is servicing the interrupt service routine. It is handling one interrupt. During the time it handles one interrupt, it disables the interrupts. Nobody can interrupt the processor. So after finishing this, it comes back here and that time it will enable the interrupt. So maybe another interrupt will interrupt the processor. Then it will go and execute the interrupt service routine. While it is executing the service routine, no more interrupts can disturb the processor. Okay, so it disables and enables. So that's the idea. So a disabled interrupt simply means the processor can and will ignore it. Will ignore the interrupt request signal. If an attempt occurs during the time, it generally remains pending. So this will be remain pending and will be checked by the processor after it enables. After it finishes, it comes back and the processor will enable. When it enable, it will see the new request, the new signal, interrupt signal. When the user program is executing, an interrupt occurs, the interrupts are disabled immediately. After the handler completes only, then the interrupts are enabled. So this is one approach. But the drawback of this approach is we don't consider the priority. Maybe I was executing this interrupt service routine which is having the low priority. When I was executing, I receive a signal, interrupt signal, which is having a high priority. What do you mean by high priority? Maybe this interrupt is too important. Okay, then this interrupt. Okay, so when you have too important, I have to execute this task first, is it? But in this approach, as you disable and you will enable after completing the interrupt service routine only, you won't notice the high priority interrupts. Okay, can you get the idea? So that is one drawback. So now what is the idea? So go for the second approach. The second approach is to define priority for the interrupt and allow the interrupt of the high priority to be executed then the low priority. Okay, so that's the idea of what second approach. Okay, so let's see the second approach. It's written in the second diagram. It's shown in the second diagram. So at this point there got an interrupt signal. So CPU receives the interrupt signal. So it goes to the interrupt service routine, that is the handler. Interrupt service routine means the handler. So it was executing the interrupt service routine. While it was executing, CPU receives another interrupt signal. Another interrupt signal. Maybe this one is having the high priority and this interrupt signal has low priority. So what it will happen? CPU jumps to this interrupt service routine. That means the interrupt handler. It starts to execute that interrupt. After finishing it, it continues the low priority interrupt. After finishing this, it goes back and continue its normal execution. Can you get the idea? This is the way we can satisfy the high priority interrupts. Okay then. So this is the idea of the two approaches. One approach is disabling the interrupts and enable after you finish with the interrupt service routine. That means the handler. And the second approach is you serve the high priority interrupts. So that's the two approaches. Okay, let's move on to the more detailed, the time sequence of the multiple interrupts. Sometimes you may have many interrupts coming on the same time. Who knows that? Okay, so let's see the time sequence of multiple interrupts, and let's assume that they have the high priority. This is the second approach. Second approach is having the priority. So you will be CPU will be serving the high priority jobs. So this is the time sequence, how it works. This is the second approach. So let's assume that we have many interrupts. Let's say that we have this is for the printer service routine, and this is for the communication, and this is for the disk. And let's see the priority. For printer, the priority is 2. Let's assume one example. Simply, this is not true. I'm just giving a number. So for communication, the priority is 4. For disk, the priority is 5. Let's assume 5 means this is the high priority. This is medium. Am I right? 4 is medium, and this is the low priority. At first, while CPU was executing at this point, it receives the interrupt signal from the printer. Only one interrupt, at present only one signal, interrupt signal. So it goes and executes the printer service routine. And while it was executing, can you see here, it receives two interrupt signal. One for the communication, which has the priority 4, and one for the disk, which has the priority 5. So at this point, which is having the high priority? Which is the disk, which has the high priority. Fine. So high priority jobs, the disk this service routine will be taken into account, and later on this service routine will be taken into account because this is having the high priority. So the disk interrupt service routine will be executed, then communication service routine will be executed. Afterwards, the pending task of the printer will be executed because it was in the middle, is it? And after finishing this, the normal flow of your program will be executed. This is your normal program of your normal flow of your program. Okay, so that will be executed. Can you get the idea? This is the time sequence in the second approach, which is having priority. Okay then. So this is the chapter 3 part 1 until interrupts. Thank you.